Hi everyone. Today we are talking about type hints. Type hints is when you add information about the literal type of the object that you're working with in Python. So if you're working with a list, you literally write in the program that it is a list. If you're working with a string, you would literally write in the program that you're working with the string. Now, it sounds like a lot more work, so why would you want to do this? Well, if you're working inside of an integrated development environment, this is also known as an IDE for short, your IDE can give you back information. It can run certain checkers to make sure that you're giving certain functions the correct type of object. It also adds to the readability. So other people are reading through your code, they know what types of data you're expecting in your functions or what types of data each object should be. And then finally, this is my personal opinion on this. It's actually thought provoking. So it forces you as the programmer to actually spend a little bit of time thinking about how your program works and what data types are being passed around through your function. Now, this is really abstract right here, so let's jump into some syntax. If you have an object and you want to give it a type hint, you would add a colon directly after the label. So we always have a label on the left-hand side of the equal sign and the value of that object on the right-hand side. So here you would do label, colon, and then give it a type hint, and then the value just like normal. If you're trying to add type hints to a function, well, you would have your parameter, and then you would give it a colon and the type hint, and then separate it with a comma just like you normally would, and then you would have your parameter number two, your type hint number two, for as many parameters as your function has. Now, this does have a special syntax right here. This is a dash followed by a chevron. It looks like a little arrow, and this is telling us that this function is going to return something. So you would type this in and then give it a return type. Notice that all of this happens before the final colon of the actual function definition. Now, what do you actually put there for the type hints? Because that code that I wrote on the previous page won't actually run. Here, if you're dealing with text, which is a string in Python, the type hint label that you would use is str. If you're working with numeric data and it's an integer, then you would use int for float, and so on. So I'll leave this up here for you, and we'll take a look at this special none type object in Python in just a little bit. Let's look at some object examples. So if I look at the object age, the label is age, the value is 89. If I want to add a type hint to this, I'd go to the end of the label, I'd write a colon, and then I would type in the data type, which is an integer. Here, what is numbers? Oh, well, numbers is a list. So I would add a colon, and then I would say that this is in fact a list. Here my affirmation, I can do this. That is a string. And finally, this last one here is our dictionary. So we would do a colon and dict, which is short for dictionary. Now, for example, if we look at our numbers list, it is a list, but it is a list of integers. So we can take this one step further by adding square brackets to the end of list and putting the object that's contained inside of the list. We can do the same thing down here for the dictionary. We would do a square bracket and we would say that all of the keys are strings and all of the values are strings as well. So notice I have square brackets and then the key and the values are separated by commas. Here we have a very simple function, and this works without any type hints whatsoever. So if I run this code, I do in fact get back hello PyBytes. The name of my function is greet. The parameter here is name, and this just returns an f string, hello, and then the object name. Down here, when I pass in the argument of PyBytes, you can see that it prints out hello PyBytes. If we wanted to add type hints to this, we would come here to the end of name. And what is name expected to be? Well, we expect it to be a string. This function does return something. What do we expect this function to return? This is also going to return a string. So now we've added type hints. You can see that it doesn't change the output of the code whatsoever. It just gives us as the programmer a little bit more to think about. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm passing in a name and or excuse me, I want to make sure that I'm passing in a string for the name and that it returns a string. And let's go ahead and look at this final example right here. Here I have an affirmation. I can do this. And then I have a little repeater. So I want to repeat a given message for some number of times. And then you can see this entire function is only 2 lines and it says for blank in range of the number, go ahead and print the message. And then right down here, I have the repeater. I call the function with the affirmation as my message, and I want it to be 3 times. So if I run this code, I see it right here. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Well, let's add some type hints. What data type do we expect message to be? Well, we expect message to be a string. What data type do I expect number to be? I expect it to be an integer because if I try to pass in a float or if I try to pass in a string into the range function, I'm going to get a type error. Now, what does this function return? Well, let's think about it. I don't see the return keyword anywhere in this function. So this function doesn't actually return anything. It does something. It uses the print function to display in the output or in the console, I can do this. It prints out the message, but it doesn't actually return something. So if you're in a situation in Python where you need to, or excuse me, where you have a function that doesn't return anything, you use that special none type. So we're going to say the return value here is none. And now if I run the code, you can see the output doesn't change, but I've thought about it as a programmer. I know that the message needs to be string, the number needs to be an integer, and this particular function returns nothing. Thanks for watching. Good luck on today's bite.